Welcome to But Frankly Pierce News. I'm Arthur Fairview. Here's what we're facing. On Friday, Republican hopefuls for the 2024 presidential nomination courted members of the National Rifle Association at the NRA's 2023 conference, promising looser gun laws.
Just what we need. Less regulation on guns.
This was immediately followed by two more mass shootings. In Dadeville, Alabama, killing 4 people, wounding 28, and in Louisville, Kentucky, killing 2 people and wounding 4.
Oh, but yes, definitely loosen gun laws.
Last Thursday, Ralph Yarl, a high school junior, came to the wrong address to pick up his younger siblings. After Yarl rang the doorbell, the 84-year-old homeowner shot him through the glass door, later telling police he was scared to death. 2 days later, a group of friends were driving through rural upstate New York looking for a friend's house when they turned into the wrong driveway. As they were in the process of turning around, authorities say the homeowner emerged from the house and fired at least 2 shots into the car, killing one of the passengers, Kaylin Gillis. These are examples of where are today gun violence propagated by laws drawn up by the NRA. One law which may be invoked in this situation is the Stand Your Ground law.
Time was, you had to show a threat of deadly force in those situations.
Perhaps it is time to revisit Stand Your Ground statutes.
Stand your ground!
The modern wave of Stand Your Ground laws began in 2005 in
Florida.
This is Florida. The goddamn state is shaped like a gun.
Yes, in Florida, after lobbying by
The NRA?
Yes, by the NRA. The shootings of Yarl and Gillis, 48 hours and some 1,200 miles apart, have reignited scrutiny and criticism of the Stand Your Ground statutes, which allow individuals to use deadly force in dangerous situations, even when they could have safely retreated from the encounter. Kansas City Mayor Quentin Lucas decried this on Monday during the Rachel Maddow Show on MSNBC.
If this is the sort of thing where Stand Your Ground can be enforced, then every U.S. postal worker, every Amazon delivery person, every pizza delivery person, every Girl Scout volunteer, anybody knocking on your door now becomes somebody who's subject to be shot.
Moving on to something a bit lighter. With the debt ceiling crisis looming, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy outlined a proposal to lift the nation's credit limit for 1 year in exchange for significant spending cuts and GOP policy changes to federal assistance programs.
And how did that go over?
How do you think? Like a lead?
President Biden is asking for a clean bill to raise the debt ceiling and pay the nation's bills. Whatever McCarthy comes up with, it has to pass the Senate, and Majority Leader Chuck Schumer isn't falling for it either. He had this to say about McCarthy's demands.
What we got today was not a plan. It was a recycled pile of the same things he's been saying for months, none of which has moved the ball forward an inch.
Twitter is in the news again, and not in a good way.
Was there ever a good way with Twitter?
Not since it got all musky.
Twitter labeled NPR as state-affiliated media.
No, it's not true.
Yes, state-affiliated media, which is the same term Twitter uses for propaganda outlets in Russia, China, and other autocratic countries. After an interview with owner
And Chief Twit,
Elon Musk, the mislabeling was downgraded to government-funded media.
Yeah, like that's any better.
That revised label was also stamped on the BBC by Twitter. The BBC disputed the description, saying the BBC is and always has been independent. We are funded by the British public through license fee. Twitter has since changed the label to government-funded media.
I don't get it. NPR and the BBC? These are two very reputable news sources.
And there it is.
In response, NPR has taken the bold step to leave Twitter. The news organization says those labels are inaccurate and misleading, given that NPR is a private, nonprofit company with editorial independence. It receives less than 1% of its $300 million annual budget from the federally funded Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
It's time again for the NPR Pledge Drive, our fundraising initiative, because NPR is brought to you by generous listener support.
NPR will no longer post fresh content to its 52 official Twitter feeds. becoming the first major news organization to go silent on the social media platform. NPR CEO John Lansing stated, "I would never have our content go anywhere that would risk our credibility."
Well done, NPR.
Way to stick it to the twit.
Musk's response to this was, as you might imagine, in a tweet. #defund at NPR.
Well, that's childish.
Yeah, but so is he.
Next, Harvard University is renaming its Graduate School of Arts and Sciences after billionaire hedge fund executive and Republican megadonor Ken Griffith, who is the 35th richest man in the world, according to Bloomberg.
Why?
The announcement comes after a new $300 million contribution that brought Griffith's total support of his alma mater to more than $500 million.
This smells already.
His name carries controversy.
Heavens, a Yale man!
Well, not quite. The controversy stems from Griffin's stature as a major political donor to right-wing politicians, as well as the investments his company Citadel has made in firearm and ammunition manufacturers.
Residents at 37th in South Wabash say they heard people arguing, then gunfire. As many as 30 shots fired.
Griffin's companies Citadel, LLC, and Citadel Securities held investments in gun and ammunition manufacturers worth more than $139 million as of March 2022, according to Chicago NPR affiliate WBEZ.
About 5 minutes earlier, a 17-year-old girl was shot in Garfield Park. Police say several people were outside a home near Lexington and Sacramento. 2 people fired shots from an alley. The girl and a man who was also shot showed up at Mount Sinai Hospital. Another teen victim, a 14-year-old boy, was wounded just before 9 Friday night at 31st and South DuSable Lakeshore Drive. Police are trying to determine what happened right before he was shot.
WBEZ's analysis of firearms recovered by Chicago police from violent crime incidents over 5 years found that nearly 1 in 4 were produced by companies in which Citadel invests. These include shares in the U.S. gun manufacturers Smith & Wesson and Sturm Ruger, as well as U.S. ammunition makers Olencor, Vista Outdoor, and Ammo Incorporated.
I want to show you something. It's my shocked face.
The investments became a matter of public debate in 2022 when Griffin poured millions into a Republican candidate for the governorship of Illinois. Griffin accused a sitting Democratic governor, J.B. Pritzker, of failing to combat crime in Chicago, where Griffin's companies were based. Griffin has rejected calls by the Chicago Sun-Times newspaper for his companies to divest from gun and ammunition makers, writing in a letter to the editor that 40% of American households own a gun, and that the violence destroying our city is not the result of...
Let me guess. Legal gun purchases.
A failure to prosecute criminals.
A lack of support for police.
Lack of mental health support.
Survey said...
A progressive left legislation that prioritizes criminals ahead of law-abiding citizens?
Bingo.
He added, "I will not embrace today's cancel culture, nor engage in amateurish virtue signaling based on blind ideology."
May every person that laughs at your sophomoric effort be a reminder of your eternal mediocrity and pierce your heart like a knife.
Griffin moved his company's headquarters to Miami in 2022, where, surprise, surprise, he is one of the most prominent backers of Florida Governor Ron
Desensitize?
Desanitize?
Other Florida man
On the nosy!
DeSantis, whom Griffin has urged to run for president in 2024. Griffin gave nearly $60 million to Republican candidates for federal positions in 2022, according to Politico.
Money, money, money. Must be funny in the rich man's world.
When asked to comment about Griffin's association with DeSantis and his sometimes controversial policies, a spokesperson for Citadel said, "Ken respects and employs people of all backgrounds."
Of course he does.
Now we explore the world of the unlikely and bizarre with...
The deuce, you say?
By now you know about the Tennessee Three, where 2 black Democratic representatives, Justin Pearson and Justin Jones, were expelled and then reinstated unanimously by their districts.
Much to the chagrin of their Republican colleagues.
Well, that is not the only thing happening in Tennessee's legislature. We told you about Representative Paul Sherrill's unusual amendment.
Put amendment on that, it would include hanging by a tree also.
Well, that lynching comment got him bumped from the Criminal Justice Committee to the Transportation Committee.
The wheels on the bus go round and round.
That's it?
But wait, there's more. Tennessee House Speaker Cameron Sexton, who led the charge to expel Jones and Pearson, is now facing scrutiny for breaking the rules. Turns out in Tennessee, you are required to live in the district you represent, and he doesn't. He lists his residence in Crossville, but according to neighbors and other evidence, he's never there. His children attend school just outside of Nashville, and he reports to the legislature in Nashville as well.
So maybe he needs to change districts?
Or refile paperwork?
Perhaps. However, in addition to the evidence suggesting that Sexton lives in the Nashville area, Sexton still collects tens of thousands of dollars from Tennessee taxpayers based on the premise that he is a full-time resident of Crossville commuting to Nashville.
You are so busted.
On to America's pastime, where thanks to the newly added pitch clock this season, the action is moving much faster at Major League Baseball games. But it also means a little less time for fans to enjoy a frosty adult beverage. To combat that time crunch, some teams have extended alcohol sales through the 8th inning this season. Teams historically have stopped selling alcohol after the 7th.
That's retarded.
Milwaukee Brewers president of business operations, Rick Schlesinger, confirmed to MLB.com that their team's move to extend alcohol sales through the 8th was an experiment. If it turns out that this is causing an issue, or we feel that it might cause an issue, then we'll revert to what we have done previously. MLB says it does not regulate when teams sell alcohol. Most franchises have used the 7th inning as a cutoff, at least partly to avoid over-serving customers who could then get in their cars and drive home. But in reality, most teams already had areas around the ballpark where fans could get alcohol after the 7th, even if the concession stand stopped serving, such as restaurants or VIP areas where the booze still flows. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
It's nothing fancy. It's what you crave. Beer. Now also in light.
And finally, there is some good news. The Ocean Cleanup, the only organization currently tackling the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, or GPGP, has just reached a milestone of 200,000 kilograms, or 220 tons of plastic removed from the ocean.
Wow.
The GPGP is not so much an island as it is an area where major currents and winds have brought together trillions of pieces of plastic. By using the data of the currents and the winds to estimate volumes of plastic and to guide the captured vessels, Bohan Slat, the CEO and founder of Ocean Cleanup, believes he can clean the whole patch in just a decade.
And again, wow!
His next challenge is to somehow find uses or locations for all those billions of pieces of plastic. At the moment, the recycling is done by hand, with each piece of plastic separated by polymer type.
I heard they made a new material out of lemons and tea leaves.
Right. I think that's the Arnold polymer.
Finally, in the next chapter of the continuing saga of the other Florida man, Ron DeSantis suggested he is determined to use the power of the government to force Disney to bend to his will. He suggested some interesting ideas for land use next to the Disney property in the district. Take a look.
You know, maybe have another, maybe create a state park, maybe try to do more amusement parks. Someone even said, like, Maybe you need another state prison. Who knows? I mean, I just think that the possibilities are endless, and so that is now going to be analyzed to see what would make the most sense.
Disney promptly responded by advertising a first-ever Disneyland After Dark, an LGBTQIA+ themed event night at its California Disneyland resort. Former Republican National Committee Chair Michael Steele tweeted, "When families stop visiting and Disney's $75.2 billion economic impact and $5.8 billion tax revenues drop, its 75,000 employees face layoffs and 463,000 jobs also imperiled, what would your analytics say caused that to happen? WTF, Dumbo." It's been 833 days since the January 6th attack on the Capitol and our democracy, and the failed former president has still not been indicted or charged with anything related to the insurrection. Watch this space. This has been about Franklin Pierce News. Thanks for watching. I'm Arthur Fairview. Here's what I do. I hope to get through, so cling to what's true and tell the world too.
Thank you.